Hello everyone and welcome to this AMA, which as you know means Ask Me Anything. And because we say that, we are going to answer anything you want to ask. Therefore also we ask to submit questions in advance. There's already a lot of questions, but you are welcome to submit additional questions during the AMA. I can't promise you that we can make it through all of them because we already have a lot. But we'll see how much we can take, and we will answer the other questions in a subsequent AMA in the future. And on that note, I would like to start by saying that I, for now, expect to do this once monthly. So you can also collect questions for future AMAs. I might do some additional ones on occasion, but for now we will run this at a monthly frequency. Now, I know we have quite a lot of viewers for this particular edition. So, and I know some of them may not actually have been that familiar with Concordium. So let me just start very quickly with explaining what is Concordium really. Concordium is what we call a layer one, a foundational blockchain. So we are building a piece of key infrastructure for other people to build their use cases and projects on top of. If you wanted to draw a parallel, you could say we're building the equivalent of the internet, and other people are building the Googles and the Facebooks and the Saxo Banks for that matter on top of it. But the role we play is to be a piece of critical infrastructure. Now, there are a number of layer ones out there. The most famous one, I guess, is Ethereum. But there are a number of other people trying to fill this space. So what are the sort of key differentiators for Concordium? Well, Concordium was born out of an ambition of taking the best from a decentralized protocol, which means that there are no single points of failure. There's a lot more security around data than in a traditional database. But taking those components that are implicit in all permissionless distributed blockchains and marrying them to some of the challenges that this space will meet inside regulation, inside requirements from society around us, and trying to find the right balance between those two different requirements. So a key USP for Concordium is our foundational ID layer. When you enter into Concordium, you will be asked to confirm your ID. And in that sense, we know that anybody on the blockchain are bona fide individuals or companies or ultimately things that have an identity that is verified at the outset. That doesn't mean that this identity is flashed out to everybody, but it means actually that you gain control of your own identity and can choose to share that in various contexts or aspects of that identity for use cases where this may be required or desired by the use case. But it is under your control, and you can choose to release your full identity, but you can also release aspects of your identity, or what we call range proofs. For example, I am over 18, but you don't have to say your exact age, but maybe a use case needs to know that you're over 18. Maybe a use case needs to know that you're from Europe, but doesn't need to know you're from Denmark. That's what we call a range proof. So you can release aspects of your identity as you want, and you can prove your identity to other users of the blockchain across the entire system. So it's not a siloed layer 2 ID solution. It is actually implemented right at the foundational layer. Once we have that, and we know that that has happened, we can also allow actually more privacy than you have on most blockchains. So there's a lot of privacy functions on Concordium. That means that you can know that you're dealing with a specified individual, but you don't have to necessarily transmit what you're doing to everybody around you. And that is quite different to the structure of many other blockchains. So the ID privacy aspect is very, very important to Concordium. On top of that, we have tried to build a true layer 1 scalable blockchain. In many blockchains, you need to deploy layer 2s in order to get scalability. That usually involves some compromises with security and are not ideal solutions. Our long-term ambition is that you have a highly scalable real layer 1 blockchain where you can interact with confidence because you know that you're dealing with other individuals that have been willing to go through an ID process. And if you need to ask them something about their ID, you can do it. If they don't wish to answer, that's their choice, but you can then draw your conclusions about what you want to do. Now, the blockchain space is rapidly evolving. A blockchain is not just a blockchain. A blockchain can be built well, it can be built poorly. We have unfortunately seen examples of projects that were not built very well. So what we have put a lot of emphasis on is on really building a very solid and very professionally based blockchain. So that means that we have a lot of cryptographic scientists, because when you talk about crypto, that is about cryptography, and cryptography is what secures the integrity and the unbreakability of a blockchain. So we have focused a lot on having the right science behind us. We are building tech in a way that is more conform with a more corporate tech build. And we have a group of people here that are with solid, you can say, traditional old-world backgrounds, understanding the boxes that a corporate, for example, needs to tick if it is to venture into using a permissionless distributed blockchain. And those are many boxes, and we need to be sure that we also provide an environment where a serious corporate can feel comfortable entering into this space. That doesn't mean that we don't want to appeal to the crypto native space, that we don't want to support all the exciting and innovative use cases that we see out there, but we do them inside an environment where you can feel safe, where you can know that you're interacting not with bots, but with real identifiable individuals that you can communicate to and verify their seriousness and their ID. Why is that so important? Well, it is important because in many contexts you need to be sure with what you're dealing with. For example, in financial use cases, in gambling use cases, in social environments where you may want to know who you're dealing with. And here you have that option of simply giving that information if you choose to do so. You also own your own ID, which means that you have the ability to ultimately use that for various purposes, monetize it in a way that is not currently possible, where you leave your ID to big tech platforms that then go out and monetize the information they have about you. So it's giving back the power to the users, it's giving back ID to yourself, but it's still with a heavy focus on privacy and creating an environment where we can confidently interact. And that's going to get even more important because you probably, who hasn't heard about ChatGPT recently? Who hasn't heard about deep fakes? We're entering a world now where it'll be extremely difficult to see the difference between what is real and what might be a bot or what might be somebody trying to defraud you or give you a false impression, right? And we are now at a point where it's kind of scientifically proven that the development of AI today is so advanced that it is literally impossible to tell a true actor from a bot or from a fake actor. So those key things, that the blockchain can stand a tech due diligence, that the science is solid, that the scalability is there, that we have the right balance between ID and privacy. Those are the things that Concordium is trying to bring to this space, and that's something that for sure will be increasingly understood by the market. The difference between this and not having those characteristics, I think, will ultimately be very important in what blockchain you choose to build your project on. So that's kind of a very simple and quick introduction to what Concordium is. And this is not about a presentation, this is about answering your questions. So I'm now going to drop immediately to your many questions and keep them coming. As I said, we may not have the chance to answer them all today, but I'll try to do relatively quick answers to them so we get through most of them at least. Now, there's a question here actually about how often will I do these in the future, and as I said earlier, my ambition is to have a monthly schedule for that, and then there may be additional AMAs. There will also be AMAs from many other representatives of Concordium, because I can perhaps speak to the overall strategy, vision, management, but we have specialists in the tech area, in the crypto native area, in the commercial usability area, the science area, etc. So I will not be the only spokesperson, and I am not the only spokesperson today, but we will increasingly do more presentations, more AMAs, also together with interesting use cases that choose to build on Concordium. The next question is, what are the most important key priorities for Concordium this quarter? I sent out a message to the community recently where I tried to outline these, but there's a number of things we're looking at re-energizing and refreshing. Overlying all of this is kind of the narrative for what we're trying to build. So we're trying to together put a very specific and very accurate narrative at top of everything we do, so we can be sure that the message is consistent throughout all of our communication and all of the different ways you're going to see us in media and social media and other contexts. And that is really that what we're trying to do at Concordium is we're trying to build a safer digital world. We're trying to build an access where you can interact with confidence with other people because you know that they are real people. You know that if you need certain information and they're willing to give it to you, you can have it. You know that if somebody is selling you an NFT or selling you a service, that it is actually the correct person, the person that it proposes to be, that is offering that service or that NFT. So creating a world that is safer for us all to use. And as I said, with all the new AI, with all the different actually lack of seriousness around ID in many social media, this is only becoming more and more and more important, and we have the solution for these things. The next question is, are there any big use cases coming soon? And yes, there are some very interesting use cases coming. Now, as I will also tell you a little bit later in this, when you're dealing, for example, with a corporate, they want to control the information flow. They have their own agendas, and they will have to be some that we agree with how we do this presentation to the broader world of such projects. So I can sort of give you a couple of teasers towards. We have a very interesting big Asian company that's going to launch something. We have other sports projects that are going to launch, but I really cannot tell you about them before those use cases are ready to talk about them themselves. One thing I can tell you, which I think is very important, is that we are going to bring out, and here we're talking in the very near future, early May, mid-May maximum, we're going to bring out essential components to the ecosystem. For example, we have our DEX ready for testnet in a few weeks. Concordex, as it's going to be called. We have the necessary bridge being ready for integrating with other blockchains. We have a launch pad coming out towards the end of this month. And we have a very interesting project about portable ID that we call MySomi ID, which will, in essence, enable you to verify your profile on other projects than Concordium, what you know as blue ticks on many of the social media platforms. So these are some of the very interesting things I believe we're going to bring to you very soon. So there's a lot of stuff coming. There's a good inflow of business cases. We are going to make a much stronger proactive outreach to focus on certain areas that we think are particularly useful or particularly suited to the various characteristics that I described to you. More specifically, key priorities at the moment is to really build a strong infrastructure for marketing campaigns. We're well along that road with a team more or less in place. We, as I said, will have a more proactive lead generation function for our commercial department. And we have a number of things where we are simply going to create more awareness and more visibility around Concordium. And of course, that is both to the general public, to our communities, but also to people that might see a benefit from using Concordium rather than other blockchains. I have a question here relating a little bit to that. We haven't seen many marketing campaigns from Concordium lately. Can you reveal any new activities coming up? Yes, I can do that, and I have already explain perhaps why we have focused in the recent weeks on building a strong foundation for our messaging, because one thing is you need to have a clear narrative. Another thing is you need to have a very strong model for how you roll out that narrative. And that is what we're building at the moment. We have a project list of at least 100 projects inside marketing. Obviously, we can't do them all in the immediate term, but a prioritization of what's most important, how are we going to roll it out. And as an example, we will actually roll out a first campaign inside this new infrastructure already, must be next week. We have something called Earth Day, which is an ESG global day. It's on the 24th of April. And as we are doing a number of ESG cases, we're going to do a campaign, a moderate campaign, because we're testing a few things, but we're going to roll out a campaign related specifically to that. I mentioned my SoMe ID, this idea that you can transport a verification to another project, typically SoMe, that's why we call it my SoMe ID. That is something we're going to build a significant campaign around. And actually, I would like you to, as a community, to try to use this functionality, because I think there's potentially a lot of virality also here, that if people see it being used, and they go and actually verify that that individual is a person that they claim to be on a given social media, that may entice them to do that for themselves. So I'm also asking you in the community to help in that campaign. The whole aspect of infrastructure, the Concordex, the DEX, the bridge, the launch pad, these things we will also build a campaign around. They will go on testnet initially for a few weeks, but we will build a campaign around attracting users to this testnet, and obviously when we have the full launch to get users for that. So there are things forthcoming in the near future, but there's also an ongoing structuring case going on internally, where we are making sure that we have the right team to execute this with very clearly defined various responsibilities, so that we can roll things out much more efficiently, ultimately also in multilingual form, because I think speaking directly to people in their own language is very important, and we already have a half a dozen or more local language communities that we want to support better. The next question is, what is Concordium's long-term vision for the future of blockchain technology, and how does it see itself contributing to the industry's evolution in terms of innovation, adoption, and social impact? I am a very big believer in blockchain. I made my first important project in the early days of the internet with Saxo Bank, and back then I had a very strong feeling, although it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what was going to be the killer use cases, what were going to be the really big winners. You had this instinctive feeling that the internet could change the world, because it could be used for so many things in so many industries. Now, the problem with the internet is that it's excellent for distributing information and distributing marketing and selling products, etc. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a truth layer. It's also very ripe for distributing fake information or fraudulent activities. And what I see with blockchain is a little bit the same today. I see something that has the potential to impact nearly every industry to greater or smaller extent, but nearly any industry can benefit from what blockchain provides. Because what is it blockchain provides, particularly a well-built blockchain with an ID layer? Well, it creates a much better data structure. It creates the ability to actually introduce a level of truth to the internet, that you can know with certainty who owns an asset. You can know how many copies of a given asset is in existence. You can know whether it's unique or there's 100 editions. You can know who owns it. You can know who issued it. You can know who you're talking to. And that is really applicable to anybody that deals with data, currently in traditional databases. But who wouldn't want a safer way to handle their data, a more trustworthy way to present their data, a more transparent way to present their data? So I'm sitting very much with the same feeling that this technology has transformative potential across a really, really wide range of industries. And I'm very convinced that vision will be fulfilled over the coming years. Now, our role in that is to really build a platform where safety comes first, where we're evolving our infrastructure while also improving our privacy offerings. So we are building a platform that helps to protect privacy, but with a safety net of knowing that it's not being abused. I'm not a blockchain maximalist. I don't think there's going to be a winner takes all. I think there's going to be multiple blockchain technologies out there. And in this world, we will also connect closely to other blockchains, provide our piece of the puzzle to it. We're already having, in recent weeks, very constructive conversations with other blockchains. And many blockchains out there saw one problem, but not another. And there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships around this with multiple platforms and with multiple other blockchains, as well as our own services. And this unique safety features that we build in, we really want to eventually make available to anyone that's building a digital infrastructure across any device. So our idea here is to play our role in that system, to play a significant role. But I don't think any single blockchain will achieve world domination, and I don't think we will either. But I think we have a very good offering with some very unique characteristics that will be of great importance in this space. And of course, we are following very closely what else is happening out there and trying to make sure that we stay at the cutting edge. How does Concordium plan to ensure the compliance of its platform with various regulatory requirements, and what measures will it take to address privacy and security concerns in various jurisdictions? Well, first of all, you should know that Concordium Foundation is a Swiss foundation operating under Swiss law. Now, general compliance and the ability to comply with regulation is a very high priority for Concordium. But the addressing of these concerns is actually one of the main reasons that I and a small group of people set out to do this project in the first place. It is in principle accessible from nearly all places in the world, but because of the ID layers, we also have the ability to manage access in various jurisdictions due to the fact that if a use case requires a certain jurisdictional access restriction, well, if you cannot prove that you're from that jurisdiction, or you can prove that you are from that jurisdiction, they can make their choices in who they allow to access their various services. So I think that we provide the infrastructure for making it easy for people to comply, but ultimately also, of course, the compliance is down to the individual use case in their individual jurisdiction. We're just providing an increasing number of building blocks to make that as simple and as modular as possible. Another thing we will announce also is a collaboration around AI in this particular aspect to improve the governance modules that we can offer to people that want a simple road to making sure that they are monitoring their projects appropriately, that they are able to meet the necessary regulations. So that is another thing that we will tell you a bit more about before too long. Now, with respect to privacy, there is a lot of privacy in Concordium, and we can ensure that any personal information is under your control, and it's you that decide how you distribute that in various contexts. So I think that's a key concern here, that the knowledge that there's an identified person or entity behind it allows more privacy than perhaps if it was anonymous actors out there. I think we have what some of you may have noticed called shielded transfers, which means that you can actually shield what you're transferring between one and another account, because you don't necessarily want everybody to know how much money you have on your account or who you're transferring that money to. Which is very similar to a bank account where you know who the holder is, but you don't put the contents of that out on the internet. So that balance between ID and privacy is one for us to build a piece of infrastructure that makes it much easier for people to comply, but ultimately the compliance for many use cases and projects will of course be their responsibility in their jurisdictions, and we're just trying to make their life easier and also help many of the crypto-native projects that started out with great innovations and many super ideas, but today perhaps are realizing that, oops, there are now regulators interested in this, there are lawmakers interested in that, and we want to help this environment also be able to meet those various requests from society around them in as easy and as modular a way that we can. How will the governance system that Concordium plans to implement allow token holders to vote on proposals and shape the future of the platform? And what role will token holders play in the decision making? Now, it's important to say here that we absolutely have a plan for Concordium to be a decentralized, fully decentralized blockchain over time. But we also feel that it's necessary to give it direction in the early stages. For example, we wouldn't want a decision now by the token holders that we want to remove the ID layer, because that kind of spoils the idea that you build some unique features, but if you can immediately sort of downvote them, we don't want that to happen at an early stage of the project, and I don't think it would be possible to create interest in a project where it could go in any direction at any given point in time. But we do actually have a very clear plan for decentralization. It is available on our website about how we're going to achieve it. Now, currently, the blockchain is managed by our governance committee, which consists of 5 members appointed by the Concordium board. Now, you would say there's not a lot of decentralization in that because you're appointing the members of the governance committee, and that is correct, because it's a process where we are, over time, going to release more and more seats on this governance committee to the community. The governance committee will make decisions around what decisions will be put out to token holders, and ultimately, over a multi-year process, the token holders will be in control of the composition of this governance committee. So that's how we've chosen to do it, a controlled but very clear process towards full decentralization, which ensures that the system is developed according to the vision for the project, what we have all bought into and what we are all believers in. But over time, as it matures, to hand over that responsibility entirely to the community over the next years. There's a question here, what's something you have underestimated regarding the rollout of Concordium's blockchain technology? What are some learnings you've made? How do you plan to use these learnings in the future? Now, I see this in in sort of two separate areas. I believe that what we set out to do and what we promised to do was to build a scientifically sound, technologically solid, scalable blockchain, layer 1 blockchain. I believe that we're achieving that and that we're rolling it out, and we have now minted around 6 million blocks without major incident. So technology is working. The question here is probably also more referring to the adoption of that technology. And I would like to say, one, adoption is actually pretty good. You know, we're seeing at the moment a lot of use cases coming our way. We are probably in discussion with well over 200 use cases at various aspects of that, at various stages of that process, identifying how they can build with us, what they can build, where we need to help them, how we can assist them in making a really great project on Concordium. And out of those, we have somewhere between 50 and 100 in the process of actually building. So there is a good inflow of use cases. As I said earlier, we're going to make the outreach much more proactive in terms of getting more people to use us. And we're gonna accelerate that process also through general awareness. I would say if there's a learning we have taken, and that is something that I am addressing at the moment together with the team around the narrative, we have focused a lot on ID and regulation. And that is, of course, a very important aspect that Concordium is trying to facilitate it, make it easier to be compliant, make it easier to build projects that are accepted by the world around us. In that process, I think perhaps we have been a little bit too one-eyed in the way we have formulated that. And that has perhaps meant that a number of crypto natives have said, well, that's not relevant for us, and this is a corporate blockchain. Let's go somewhere else. Now, I don't believe that's the case. I believe that our vision and mission to make the digital world a safer place is very relevant for the crypto native space. is very relevant for many of the great innovations out there that want to add additional layers of control to their projects. And of course, there will be people out there that don't want it, and that's fine with me. I mean, then perhaps there are other blockchains better for them. But I mean, I believe that the vast majority of projects out there actually want to achieve significant adoption, mainstream adoption, and that means playing by some rules that allow that. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people in this space are seeing regulation as a worry, as a necessary evil, as something that's going to make their life much harder. And to some extent, it's not going to make your life easier. But what you will see as the flip side of that, or the silver lining, is that once you have a trustworthy framework for an industry, then adoption begins to increase. I mean, if you look at the traditional finance sector, that was pretty much the Wild West in the 70s and the 80s and deep into the 90s in Europe. Then came a whole flood of regulations, which also caused the changes to some business models. But if you look at what's happening in financial markets today compared to what happened in them in the 70s and the 80s, we are infinitely higher volumes, infinitely more users, multiple X's of profitable business cases. So the flip side of providing a responsible framework around it is actually mass adoption. And for me, at least, that's what I hope to see for blockchain. And I think that sound regulation is a necessary means for that. So we're also going to offer increasingly and speak more to the crypto native space, because I believe we have a lot to offer them. And we have great admiration for many of the innovations that are happening out there. With my decades in the traditional finance sector, I can tell you there's a lot of stuff that could be improved there. There's a lot of stuff that could be safer, more efficient, quicker, cheaper. And we have great solutions for that in the DeFi space, for example. And I think these things will merge to some extent, that the traditional sector will begin to deploy on these new innovations, and will also bring some interesting knowledge to those spaces, because they're not fools, people that are sitting at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and the traditional world. They know a lot about how the financial industry works. They will be very interested in tokenization that will allow them to bring out whole new products to whole new client groups. So there's a synergy between these things that people have to see. And part of that is that we are entering a more regulated area. And part of that is that a lot of use cases and a lot of functions will require the ability to ID yourself and to do KYC on what you do. So if I should say there's a learning there, I want to make sure that people understand that we are, in principle, a use case agnostic blockchain. We also want to be there for the crypto native space. We also want to be a part of that innovation. At the same time, we want to provide something that, traditional old world corporates can get comfortable improving their systems, their governance, their provenance, their transparency, their ability to prove to an increasingly sophisticated young generation of consumers that they actually do things well, that they do things in responsible ways, that they can prove these things through showing their provenance change, showing their logistic change, showing on a blockchain that they are doing things in ways where they're willing to share transparency and be honest about their processes. So for me, it's about making sure we encompass the entire industry. I believe we have relevance for the entire industry, and I think there are great things going on that has nothing to do with the old corporate world, but we want to be there for both. So that's the learning, and I think that is something we're going to stress, that our vision of creating a safer digital interaction is exactly as valid for what we call crypto-native type use cases as it is for the old world slowly moving into the space, and in my view, increasingly will move into this space at a quick and rapid increase. So I have one here. Please update us on Volvo and IKEA. This was a big selling point 1-2 years ago. Now again, I adhered to that earlier. When you're dealing with corporates, you need to let them function and need to accept their agendas for what they're doing. I know that you want to hear great stories about this exciting use case coming and that exciting use case, But a big corporate might have a completely different view. They might have the view, we're bringing out something here that is innovative, that is unique, that is a first mover. We're not going to tell anybody about that, not the slightest bit, before we're ready to go. So I can't share those types of information with you. So I'm sorry, and I know you would like me to do that, but I can't really go into details of the corporate use cases that we're working on. And I can't even really confirm which ones we're working on and which ones we're not working on, because I don't want to upset these corporates in their agenda and their strategies. Can we get a Concordium transparency report similar to other blockchains? I think that's a very valid question. We are looking at that. We will provide something along those lines. I think it's a reasonable request. So you can look forward to hearing more about that in the not too distant future. When can we get some concrete dates on coming quarterly plans so it's easier for people to relate to the milestones and dates and progress more one-to-one and it gets more tangible? I can assure you that we have internal deadlines, and I can also assure you that I like deadlines, because deadlines are important for focus, they're important for deliverable. They're important to finding out who can meet a deadline and who cannot meet a deadline. I also know, though, that a deadline sometimes will have to be postponed for valid reasons. You know, that there is a new consideration that pops up, and where it would be irresponsible to bring out the project on that date if you can bring out a better project 2 weeks later. So what I've tried to give you here is some teasers around approximate timings around this, but I am a little bit reluctant to give out too firm deadlines, because I don't want people being disappointed because something doesn't launch on the 29th of April, but instead on the 7th of May, right? There can be valid reasons to extend the deadline, but rest assured that we do work with deadlines. I actually think that generally people are quite good at meeting them, and I think also our tech roadmap, which is quite detailed in 1 to 2 quarters out into the future, and then more generalized as we go further into the future, is the only way you can do it, because this industry is changing so rapidly that we need to reserve the right to reprioritize and to meet the specific requests that our use cases and projects need. But we will try to be as specific. When we know a deadline is certain, I don't see any problem coming out with it. And I gave you a couple of hints around the bridge and the Concordex and the Launchpad that we're talking around about the beginning of next month. So we're, for example, for that, we're somewhere in that region, right? The next one is, how do you see the US crypto market right now, and what do you think will happen in the future? Once all the bad actors have been expelled and the dust has settled, will Concordium then move in to become the solution together with Bitcoin? Are we ready to go when it's time? Do we already have some kind of representation over there? US is an interesting market, and obviously will, as they have been in traditional finance and many other areas, will probably be the leaders in implementing regulations. At this moment, I think it's not very clear what those regulations are or will be. For example, there was a statement recently from a subcommittee to the SEC that they thought that virtually all tokens would be considered securities. But there's not a law saying all tokens are securities or all tokens are not securities. So it's difficult to act on the basis of that. So in many ways, I want to have a certain wait-and-see approach to the US, because I know that they will come out with stringent regulations, but I also would like to see what's happening there. I think in the EU, we also have a number of regulations. I think they're progressing quite well with that. We're trying to stay close to that and trying to understand, and where we can, add input and advice to those processes. But it is work in progress. And let me also tell you from my own background in traditional finance regulation that it's not, okay, 2 years from now, then the regulation will be in place and we all know what's going to happen from there. That's not how regulation happens. Regulation is a continuous process where new issues or challenges or opportunities are identified. Then they go through the system of being, people being aware of them, people taking advice on them, people preparing laws on them, and then ultimately politicians voting yes or no to those laws. So expect regulation to be a continuous process rather than 2 years from now, we know everything and then we can just move on and we know exactly what the rules are. That is not how regulation works, and it's just something you need to have in your mind all the time. But rest assured that one of our ambitions is to continuously try to build modules and functionalities that will make it easier for people to take their ultimate responsibilities for their projects and make sure that those are compliant and have the necessary protections in place that they need. So I can't be more specific around what our approach is going to be to the US or this or that area than we are doing what we believe can be done at the moment inside the regulations that are available. We will aim to follow and to comply with any future regulations, but in particular, we will aim to build units and modules and functionalities and things that can be ported away also directly from Concordium to support people in their ambition to be compliant. You mentioned that you would work for listings on one or two major exchanges. You also said it would be a hard fight. How is that battle going? Well, it is a hard fight because I believe today that the really, really important exchanges are really making their own decisions around what quantitative aspects do they want for listing new tokens. I think it's actually more a question of engaging with these people, explaining what is the uniqueness around Concordium, what role might we play in their own regulatory challenges going forward, which many of them will have. And for me, that is the key thing, that being present on some of the really important exchanges. I think we could go out now and bow our way into more tier 2 exchanges. It's not that difficult, but I really think it's about the big wins here. And I am in contact with several people in those industries to try to make it clear to them what we can do for them and why it would be a benefit for them to consider us for their exchanges. So it's work in progress. It is a hard piece of work, but I think we are making progress on it. But I cannot say to you that this will have a result in next week or next month even, or even next quarter, to be honest, because this requires that the exchanges themselves see the benefit of it, and we are working on that. You mentioned that Concordix was very well on the way. Any update on this together with the bridge will be highly appreciated. Well, I think I already did that. They are indeed well on the way. And I would say testnet delivery date is early May. And the bridge is obviously important for the DEX. So that goes for both of them. And an externally built launchpad overlay is also ready round about that time, I believe, but I don't want to speak for other projects, but that's the indications I have. So there's a relatively short runway to see that we have some of these critical ecosystem components, and we also know that we have projects waiting that will actually want to launch tokens once this infrastructure is in place. So it's fairly close to where we are today. The marketing team of 7, an update on that as well. I see a strong CMO in Torben, heavy Web 2 guy. What team will have around him to ensure the needed penetration for Concordium in the crypto space? Yes, we are very well progressed with that. I think we have nearly all the hires in place. Maybe 1 or 2 more coming up, but in the very near future. As I said before, very clear differentiation of responsibilities there. Some of them have significant Web 2 or classical online digital experience, and I think that's very important because when you look at marketing in this space, there's a lot of reuse of old techniques. There's a lot of optimization techniques that are not that different in this space. This is more about the messaging and what you put into those channels, but also, of course, we in that team have people with crypto native background that understand exactly that part of it. And I think we have a good mix between the two. I have worked with Torben for many years, so I know exactly what he can do. I think he's a very good choice for that role. I've seen there's been a couple of questions in the community, not right here, but is he full-time on the exercise? Yes, he is full-time on the exercise. So there's a very heavy focus to get this right and to build strong competencies internally, and then outsource certain aspects that we believe we can reach quicker results and maybe better results by outsourcing to various partners. But we want to have a strong internal competent team where we're building up a long-term understanding of what our use cases need, what our community needs, what the project as a whole needs. Would Torben's connections to SpeakerBee benefit Concordium? Very much. For those that don't know, SpeakerBee is a very professional set of studios in Copenhagen where we produce, I'm a part of that company too, where we produce high quality professional presentations for big corporates in various contexts, but have a number of people that know how to produce both traditional content, but also things where we engage virtual elements. We actually look a lot at AI in the SpeakerBee context, so using AI for quick production of content. And actually, there was a few people that quite justifiably complained about my last AMA, where it took a little bit of time to connect, and I had solid backlight and a bad camera, and I apologize for that. But hopefully you can see that it's looking a little bit better this time. We're streaming this not across one channel, but 6 or 7 different channels at the moment, I believe, but we will look at that afterwards, that we have a considerably much bigger audience for this one than we had for the last one. And that is an example of actually these professional production capabilities that we can produce content of a much higher quality, and it would be very easy here also to introduce various virtual elements behind me if that's what we wanted to do, and bring up all sorts of virtual components if that was needed. So yes, there's definitely a value in that connection. I have a very strong belief that you've already changed a lot internally and that things are moving much faster, but when we will start to see heavy external action. I'm a great believer in having a plan and doing things appropriately, having the infrastructure in place, and then do things. We're getting there, and as I already told you, we are doing early campaigns already next week in connection with ESG and Earth Day, in connection with MySomi, in connection with the critical ecosystem components. So you are pretty close to us beginning to use these much strengthened internal structures and facilities and human resource for external action. And I understand the question, and you can be sure that they are pretty annoyed with me saying, let's get moving. But they are right. You need to build these structures appropriately so that you can really do things right when you do them. But we are very close, and you will, as I said, see examples already next week on this. As I said, we have probably identified 100 different projects inside marketing, all directed towards creating a better distribution, a better delivery, a more systematic delivery through various channels. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and you will hopefully see the results very, very quickly. We hear a lot about the use cases and know what the team, being from TradFi, they're not into the pump and dump shilling that goes on the space. How confident is Lars of more mature investors in the TradFi space investing in crypto in the future? He must have many contacts in banking. What are their current thoughts in this nascent market? I think that this institutional adoption that many people like to talk about is about to happen. You don't see to any great extent. The institutions you see are crypto native crypto VCs and crypto funds, but the real heavy institutional players are not really in this space yet. I think they will be, and I think banks will increasingly be willing to offer service in these areas. But again, a certain regulatory framework is very, very important for these players in order for them to offer it to their clients, to feel comfortable to put products on it, to feel comfortable to distribute those products. There's a big interest. At the end of the day, I tell you, banks, they they like to make money. So if there's a big client group that is involved in a given space, they will look for ways to get into it. And there is a big client group engaged in this space. It may not be as enthusiastic as it was a year and a half ago, but it will come back. And there are certainly an unabated interest from corporates in seeing how they can deploy blockchain. So I am very sure that we will see traditional investors also seeing this as a small part of a diversified portfolio, and not least that financial institutions will see a lot of opportunities for creating new product, new distribution channels, reaching entirely new audiences. So this will happen. Here's a couple of repeat questions that I think we have covered. Any ideas to think about the token value, some burning mechanism? Trust in the token is getting scary due to its low value. I don't want to go into discussing the value of the token. That's for every person himself to evaluate whether they think the token is a good value or not. I can focus on making sure we build a great project. I can focus on making sure that we build a project that has broad application, that solves some real problems. I can focus on having a commercial team that brings great use cases. It's for the market, and it's for you to decide how you want to value that. I can look at comparisons to other blockchains with their values. I can have my own views on it, but I'm not going to sit and give financial advice. This is really for you to make your own decisions on that. We're reaching the last 10 minutes. Have you given any thought to employing a front man for Concordium? BNB has CC, ADA has Charles Hoskinson, Ethereum has Vitalik, etc. That's a very good point, and I know Charles for many years, and I know how much effort he has put into building his community. I know that he's on nearly daily for hours speaking to his community, and I think he's doing a great job and has built a great community around Cardano. All respect for that. And I have a lot of respect for the way he's doing things. Now, I don't think my time is best spent by sitting here with you 2 hours a day, to be honest. I would rather dose that. But I do think, obviously, that ultimately being one of the key people that started this project, being the active founder in the project, that responsibility falls back to me to some extent. So I will try to increase my visibility, but I also think that my time is not best spent by sitting discussing details or arguing long term with many users intraday on whether they think we should go this way or that way. We listen to your input. We follow the communities very closely. We are very interested in your input, but I think my time is also well spent by helping organize the best possible processes and the best possible structure and direct resources where they make most sense. I also think you should not see me as a sole spokesperson here. We have some really qualified people. I hope some of you enjoy some of the other AMAs. We have great spokesperson in Core for our technical side. We have great scientists that maybe will bring a little bit more forward in the picture. We have great people in the commercial spaces, in certain verticals, in the crypto native space. So don't see me as a single spokesman for this, because I can't be, and I don't think it makes sense, because I think there are, as I said, other ways that my time is also valuable to spend. And I have people that are even better spokespersons for many areas. So see us as a group of people that also will be presented in various PR context and take their part in various media presentations. The Forex market has a daily volume of 6.6 trillion. Yes, the Forex market has always been my favorite traditional finance market. I spent decades in it. I love trading it in my time off occasionally with varying success, but I have fun with it. And it is a great market, probably the most efficient market in the world. How do you feel about the idea of allowing the Concordium bridge to bring over US dollar, British pounds, euro, Australian dollars, Japanese yen, etc., stable coins off the Ethereum network? We have plans for bridging other assets. We're also speaking to a couple of specific use cases around linking real-world currencies to stable coins, which I perhaps think is even more interesting. But there's clearly a space for bringing that very large market into a more organized market based on blockchain, at least for certain participants, and provide more transparency. I think at the end of the day, the traditional FX market, which is a multi-trillion-dollar market on a daily basis, that's correct, is actually quite opaque, and it can be quite difficult to follow streams of money back through many trades through banks. And I think in many ways putting some of this on blockchain would make it a much more transparent environment, and in many ways should be a regulator's preference. So with my fairly deep understanding of that market, having spent more than 2 decades trading it and assisting people in it, I see a lot of opportunities there, and of course we will be exploring that. Once you have stablecoins on Concordium, what's the possibility of writing a script that online merchants can deploy on the checkout page that will allow customers to pay using their Concordium wallet? Absolutely. What changed the internet from being a nerdy space to being totally mainstream so that we all use it without thinking about it are all these bridges to actual uses where you don't have to think about you using the internet. And the same thing here, when we really have broken through for blockchain, it is when we have a lot of benefits from it in many different contexts, but we don't have to think about using blockchain. But we know it gives security and it gives certain aspects that we can't get from the internet, for example. So yes, we are looking at various ways. We also made some credit card gateways to make it easier for people to engage with use cases, and we will continue to build a whole range of products in that space. There's a couple of things I have answered. How is it possible that trading levels on CCD are far under the prices early investors could buy? Well, I think as you will see, most projects have gone down in price since the heyday. In some cases, some of their distribution was happening when they were in exchanges, i.e. at much higher levels, in some cases prior to exchanges. In our case, because we, for logical reasons, couldn't go down the ERC20 route, we actually only launched the token at a late stage, so after some of those processes. So the market is deciding where the CCD price is at any given point in time. Within how many years do you forecast the regulation will come to crypto? Well, I think we are in it. It's happening. And as I said, it's not a question of 3 years from now it'll be there and it's done. It's an ongoing process that will continue till the end of time. So I think that's important to know. All the people in the world who, through no fault of their own, have no access to IE cannot use this blockchain. In principle, that's true, but I think the flip side of it, could we build use cases that actually help people being able to access ID in easier ways? We have spoken to some projects on the African continent around that, where it is a big ambition for local actors and local governments to spread out their ID more than they are today, and we could be part of those processes. But you are right today. If you cannot present some kind of ID, you would not be able to access the platform as is. But there are two sides to that coin. There's a question there about. Can I absolutely say that no team members are selling CCDs? No, I cannot, because actually some team members are selling CCDs, mostly for tax reasons, is my belief. There are some unattractive tax things that fix CCDs at issue prices, which forces some people to sell there. I can, of course, confirm that I'm not myself, and I think many other central members of the team are not, but yes, there are also team members that sell and in some cases have to sell. What I can say is that has been a 12 months distribution period. We're through 9 months of it. There's 3 months left. So we are coming towards the end of that period. Will there be a fiat stablecoin on CCD? Yes, absolutely. Certainly, we'll provide a wrapped one and hopefully also a native one in due course. We're coming to the end of an hour. I think that means some of the streams are cutting off, so I will finish it here. I did make nearly all the questions. A couple of things that were a little bit repetitive. So I think I answered 95% of the questions, but you're welcome to let them keep coming. I don't know what might have come while I was talking, and we will answer them at a later date. Thank you very much for your support. Keep supporting the project. It's great to have a community such as yours, and I'll see you next month, if not before. Thank you very much.